Have you ever found yourself giving and giving, only to feel like it's never enough? You try to be kind, patient, understanding, hoping that one day they'll finally see your heart and treat you the way you deserve. But instead, you're left drained, second guessing yourself and wondering why nothing ever changes. The truth is, being nice will never change a narcissist. And that realization, as painful as it may sound, is also the most freeing truth you'll ever learn. Because the real power doesn't lie in changing them. It lies in changing the way you respond, the way you protect your peace, and the way you take back control of your own life. In this message, I'm going to share with you the 5 most powerful keys that will shift the dynamic forever. These aren't theories. These are practical, proven strategies that can help you stand stronger, set unshakable boundaries, and finally stop living on the roller coaster of their manipulation. If you've ever felt trapped in someone else's cycle of control, stay with me until the very end, because what you're about to hear has the power to break chains, rebuild your confidence, and remind you of just how valuable, strong, and unstoppable you truly are. Understanding narcissism begins with acknowledging a truth that many find uncomfortable: being kind, compassionate, or endlessly accommodating will not transform someone with narcissistic tendencies. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the patient's empathy or constant validation can awaken a better side in them, but the reality is far more complex. Narcissists thrive on admiration, control, and the manipulation of others' emotions. They have a core belief system that prioritizes their own needs, often at the expense of anyone else's well-being. Recognizing this is not about labeling or hating. It's about seeing clearly the patterns that have repeatedly caused frustration, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. Understanding narcissism means learning to distinguish between genuine relationships, where respect and reciprocity exist, and interactions with someone who is primarily concerned with maintaining their sense of superiority and dominance. It's about observing behaviors without the expectation that they will naturally change because your intentions are good or your heart is pure. Once you fully grasp that kindness alone is not a tool for transformation, a new level of clarity emerges. One that empowers rather than diminishes. This clarity allows you to stop asking why they don't change and start asking what you can control. What actions protect your peace, and what strategies create the healthiest dynamic for yourself? Understanding narcissism also involves recognizing the subtle ways in which it can manifest: manipulation that appears caring, criticism that masquerades as advice, or charm that is used to disarm rather than connect. These patterns are consistent not occasional lapses, and they reveal the underlying motivation to maintain control and prioritize the self. By internalizing this understanding, you develop a mental armor that protects you from being drawn into endless cycles of disappointment and self-blame. It gives you permission to stop over-explaining, stop over-apologizing, and stop hoping that a different tone, more patience, or greater generosity will yield change. Understanding narcissism is a form of liberation because it shifts the focus from trying to fix someone else to understanding the dynamics at play and positioning yourself strategically. It helps you see that the challenge is not with your kindness or your ability to influence. The challenge lies in the structure of their personality and the patterns they are deeply committed to maintaining. With this awareness, every choice becomes deliberate rather than reactive. Every boundary becomes a tool of empowerment, and every interaction can be evaluated through the lens of self-preservation and growth. When you embrace this truth fully, you stop wasting energy on illusions of control and start investing it where it truly matters, in your own clarity, strength, and emotional resilience, forming a foundation from which you can navigate the most challenging relationships with insight and confidence. The power of boundaries lies in their ability to create clarity, protect your energy, and assert your self-worth in a way that words alone often cannot. When dealing with a narcissist, it becomes essential to understand that being endlessly accommodating, forgiving, or tolerant will rarely inspire change. Narcissists are adept at testing limits, pushing buttons, and manipulating situations to serve their needs. Without boundaries, you leave yourself vulnerable to repeated emotional harm, confusion, and self-doubt. Boundaries are not walls built from anger or resentment. They are declarations of self. Respect, a clear statement that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable and will not be exploited. Setting a boundary might begin with something as simple as refusing to engage in arguments designed to belittle or control you, or as decisive as walking away from repeated disrespect or manipulation. Each boundary you enforce communicates a powerful message. Your life, your emotions, and your choices are under your authority, not theirs. That the process of establishing boundaries also involves internal fortitude. It requires you to identify what is unacceptable and stand firm, even in the face of criticism, guilt, tripping, or attempts to provoke. Many people hesitate to set boundaries because they fear confrontation or worry about how the other person will respond. But the truth is that boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about reclaiming control over yourself. They prevent you from being drawn into the whirlwind of someone else's insecurities, entitlement, or emotional chaos. The more consistent and unwavering your boundaries, the less room a narcissist has to manipulate or dominate. They quickly learn that certain behaviors will no longer yield the reactions they desire, which gradually reduces their influence over you. Boundaries also have a transformative effect on your self-perception. By deciding what you will and will not tolerate, you cultivate a sense of empowerment, self-respect, and emotional resilience that cannot be undermined by external behavior. Each boundary acts as a shield. Each moment of enforcement reinforces your strength, and each act of self-protection teaches the narcissist that manipulation and control are no longer effective tools against you. Over time, this consistent assertion of limits reshapes the dynamic, creating a healthier environment where your peace is prioritized and your autonomy is recognized. It is not about changing the narcissist directly, because that is beyond your control. It is about changing the relationship and protecting yourself, teaching through action rather than argument, and modeling the respect you expect. Mastering boundaries is a lifelong skill that requires awareness, courage, and persistence. But once internalized, it becomes a foundation upon which emotional freedom, clarity, and personal growth are built, allowing you to interact with confidence, make empowered decisions, and maintain integrity without being drawn into cycles of manipulation or self-sacrifice. Detaching with awareness is one of the most transformative strategies when dealing with a narcissist, because it shifts your power from reacting to controlling your own emotional state. Many people make the mistake of believing that responding to every provocation, argument, or subtle manipulation will change the narcissist's behavior. But in reality, every emotional reaction feeds their control and reinforces their patterns. Detachment is not about becoming cold, indifferent, or unfeeling. It is about creating a conscious distance between your emotions and their attempts to manipulate them. It begins with awareness, the ability to recognize when a situation is being used to provoke guilt or manipulate you. By observing their behavior objectively, without immediately absorbing the emotional weight, you prevent yourself from being drawn into their cycles of control. Awareness allows you to respond deliberately rather than react impulsively, and it creates a mental buffer that preserves your peace and clarity. Detachment requires practice and patience, because narcissists are often skilled at eliciting strong emotional responses using charm, criticism, or gaslighting to destabilize your sense of self. Each time you choose to step back emotionally rather than engage, you reclaim control and demonstrate to yourself that your worth is not defined by their approval, criticism, or manipulation. Detachment also involves shifting your focus away from trying to change them or earn their validation. The truth is that narcissists rarely change in response to kindness, logic, or confrontation. They only respond to consequences and boundaries. When you detach with awareness, you stop feeding the illusion that you are responsible for their growth, happiness, or self-reflection, and instead prioritize your own mental and emotional well-being. This approach also allows you to maintain clarity in decision making because you are no longer clouded by their emotional games or your own reactive feelings. Every interaction becomes a choice rather than a trap, and you can evaluate whether engagement serves your values or compromises them. Detachment teaches you to respect yourself enough to walk away from arguments that are designed to escalate. Refuse participation in manipulative behaviors and safeguard your time and energy for relationships that are reciprocal and healthy. Over time, practicing detachment with awareness not only shields you from emotional harm, but also sends a subtle, powerful signal to the narcissist that their tactics no longer control you. It empowers you to maintain dignity, composure, and inner strength in the face of provocation and manipulation. By detaching consciously, you cultivate resilience, reduce stress, and create space to focus on growth, boundaries, and personal priorities, transforming what could have been a draining, chaotic relationship into a situation where you maintain control of your emotions, your choices, and ultimately your life. Focusing on yourself is the cornerstone of reclaiming power and emotional stability when dealing with a narcissist, because it shifts the energy from trying to fix or control someone who cannot be changed to investing in the only person you can influence, yourself. Too often, people expend enormous amounts of mental, emotional, and physical energy attempting to alter a narcissist's behavior, believing that patience, reasoning, or constant validation will yield results. The truth is that this effort rarely produces change and often leaves you drained, anxious, and doubting your own worth. Focusing on yourself means redirecting that energy into growth, clarity, and self-preservation. It requires a conscious decision to prioritize your needs, goals, and well-being above the unpredictable and often manipulative behavior of the narcissist. When you focus on yourself, you strengthen your sense of identity, reinforcing who you are independently of their approval or disapproval. You begin to recognize that your value does not hinge on someone else's validation, and that your peace, growth, and happiness are within your control. This focus manifests in multiple ways, cultivating hobbies and passions that bring fulfillment, surrounding yourself with people who uplift rather than drain you, setting goals that align with your vision rather than their expectations, and consistently reinforcing boundaries that protect your energy. by investing in yourself, you create a life that is fulfilling and meaningful regardless of the narcissist's presence, which diminishes their power over your emotions and decisions. It also cultivates resilience because the more you invest in personal growth, the less susceptible you become to manipulation, guilt, tripping, or emotional provocation. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It is strategic. It teaches you to recognize patterns of control and disengage from them without guilt or hesitation. Every moment spent nurturing your mind, body, and spirit strengthens your ability to respond with clarity and calm rather than react impulsively to the narcissist's tactics. This approach also fosters emotional independence, enabling you to find fulfillment, validation, and motivation internally rather than seeking it from someone who is fundamentally incapable of providing it in a healthy way. As you consistently focus on yourself, you shift the dynamic of the relationship. You become less of a source of emotional fuel for their manipulation and more of a grounded individual who operates from strength, clarity, and self-respect. This shift may not change the narcissist, but it profoundly changes your experience and your emotional landscape. You gain confidence in your decisions, serenity in your choices, and freedom from the exhausting cycle of trying to earn respect or affection that is never freely given. Focusing on yourself is ultimately an act of liberation because it replaces frustration with empowerment, dependence with self-reliance, and chaos with clarity, allowing you to live intentionally, protect your energy, and create a life where your value is determined by your actions, your goals, and your unwavering commitment to your own growth. Consistency is key when dealing with a narcissist because it transforms your boundaries, detachment, and self-focus from temporary acts into lasting patterns that protect your peace and reinforce your strength. Many people make the mistake of setting limits only when they feel overwhelmed, then relaxing them when guilt, pressure, or manipulation sets in. Narcissists quickly recognize these gaps and exploit them, pushing harder each time to test how far they can go. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. It is not about creating dramatic ultimatums or engaging in loud confrontations, but about showing steady, predictable behavior that communicates clearly what is and is not acceptable in your life. Each time you hold firm to a boundary without wavering, you reinforce to both yourself and the narcissist that you will no longer participate in cycles of control, manipulation, or disrespect. Consistency removes the ambiguity that narcissists thrive on. If one day you stand firm and the next day you bend under pressure, they learn that persistence pays off and the cycle continues. But when you consistently respond with calm, unwavering actions, They are forced to adapt to the new reality that their tactics no longer work the way they used to. This steady approach also strengthens your own self-trust. Every time you honor your limits, detach with awareness, and focus on yourself consistently, you build confidence in your ability to protect your peace. This self-trust becomes a foundation for resilience, allowing you to engage from a place of clarity instead of fear or self-doubt. Consistency also prevents emotional whiplash, the exhausting cycle of being strong one moment and giving in the next, which not only confuses the narcissist, but also erodes your own sense of stability. A consistent approach creates emotional balance because you know exactly how you will respond regardless of the provocation. It also sends a message to yourself and others that your values, boundaries, and self-worth are not negotiable. Living with consistency requires patience and courage because narcissists will often escalate their behavior when they realize their usual tactics no longer work. They may become more critical, more manipulative, or more dramatic in an attempt to regain control. But the longer you remain consistent, the clearer the message becomes their old strategies have lost power. In this way, consistency not only protects you, but also shifts the dynamic over time. While it may not change who they are at the core, it changes how they interact with you and how much influence they have over your emotions and choices. More importantly, consistency transforms you. It strengthens your discipline, deepens your self-respect, and builds an identity rooted in clarity and strength. It is the quiet, steady power that creates lasting change, not because it alters the narcissist, but because it solidifies your ability to remain firm, calm, and focused no matter what storm you face. Consistency is the proof of your growth, the evidence of your boundaries in action, and the ultimate tool for reclaiming control of your life. When you step back and see the full picture, it becomes clear that being nice alone will never change a narcissist. What changes the dynamic? And more importantly, what changes you is understanding their patterns, setting boundaries that protect your peace, detaching with awareness so you're not dragged into their chaos, focusing your energy on your own growth, and practicing consistency so your strength is never compromised. These 5 steps are not quick fixes, but they are powerful tools that shift the balance of control back into your hands. They allow you to live with clarity instead of confusion, dignity instead of defeat, and strength instead of surrender. The true victory is not in changing them, but in refusing to let them change who you are at your core. You have more power than you realize, and every time you choose self-respect over manipulation, every time you choose clarity over chaos, every time you choose consistency over compromise, You are building a life that is healthier, stronger, and freer than before. So as you walk away from this message, remember this: you do not need to beg for respect. You do not need to lose yourself to keep someone else happy. And you do not need to waste your energy trying to heal what they refuse to acknowledge. Your greatest act of strength is reclaiming your focus, standing firm in your truth, and living in a way that honors your worth. Good luck as you take these steps into your own power. I want to thank you for giving your time, attention, and open heart to this message. My hope is that you leave not only with awareness, but with the courage to act, because you are capable of so much more than surviving. You are capable of thriving. Stay strong, stay grounded, and never forget your worth. Thank you, and may your journey forward be filled with peace, clarity, and unshakable strength.